There is a kind of healing that makes no sound. It leaves no footprint. It asks no permission, makes no announcement, and seeks no recognition. This healing does not reach outward, it turns inward. Most of us were taught that to help another, we must do something, say the right words, offer advice, apply effort, or intervene in visible ways. Yet the ancient wisdom tells us something far more subtle and far more powerful. It tells us that the world we see is the echo of a deeper realm, consciousness itself. If that is so, then the place of healing cannot be the body, the mind, or the circumstances of another person. It must be the awareness in which those appearances arise. To heal without another's knowledge does not mean to act secretly or manipulate unseen forces. It means to withdraw personal will entirely. It means to stop trying to change them, and instead allow truth to correct the false picture held within our own perception. When we look at another and see illness, struggle, or lack, we often believe we are being realistic. But what if we are simply agreeing with an appearance that has no authority of its own? The ancient secret is this: what we consent to in consciousness gains form, what we release returns to harmony. Healing begins the moment we stop seeing a person as broken. In silence, deep, receptive silence, we let go of the story we have been telling about them. We no longer rehearse their problem. We no longer mentally argue with symptoms, behaviors, or outcomes. We rest in a higher awareness that knows life itself is intact, intelligent, and self-sustaining. This is not denial, this is discernment. It is the ability to look beyond the surface and quietly acknowledge nothing real is missing here. When this recognition is sincere, something remarkable happens. Not through force, not through effort, but through alignment. The mind that has stopped interfering becomes transparent. And through that transparency, harmony asserts itself naturally, impersonally, effortlessly. The one being, healed, may never know why a burden lifted, why clarity appeared, or why peace returned. And that is precisely the point. Because the highest form of love does not need credit. This work requires humility. The healer must disappear. There can be no desire to be the cause, no pride in results, no attachment to outcome. The moment we think, "I am healing you," the work stops. But when we quietly abide in the awareness of wholeness, when we refuse to participate in fear, life does what it has always done: it restores balance. So the ancient secret is not a technique. It is a surrender into silence, a surrender into trust, a surrender into the truth that nothing real has ever been damaged. And from that place, healing happens, without effort, without announcement, and without the other ever knowing how gently they were loved back into harmony. To say that healing begins in consciousness rather than in the body is to reverse the usual way we understand cause and effect. Most people are trained to believe that conditions originate in matter and must be corrected through matter. Pain appears in the body, so the body is treated. Disorder shows up in circumstances, so circumstances are rearranged. Yet this approach quietly assumes that the outer appearance has power of its own. A deeper perception reveals that every visible condition is an effect, not an origin. The body does not announce illness independently, nor do situations generate harmony or chaos on their own. They respond to the state of awareness in which they are held. Consciousness is not merely personal thought or emotion. It is the silent field of awareness that gives meaning, interpretation, and form to experience. What is accepted as true in this inner realm gradually externalizes as lived reality. When consciousness is filled with fear, fragmentation, and struggle, the body mirrors that disturbance. When consciousness rests in unity, trust, and wholeness, the body naturally reflects balance. This is not a process of mental suggestion or positive thinking, which still treats the body as something to be fixed. It is a shift in identity, from seeing oneself and others as vulnerable physical organisms to recognizing life as an indivisible intelligence expressing itself. Healing at this level does not involve concentrating on symptoms or imagining them disappearing. Attention given to conditions only strengthens the belief that they are real and powerful. Instead, healing consciousness withdraws interest from appearances and rests in the recognition that life, in its essence, is already complete. In this awareness, the idea of something being broken loses its foundation. The body, freed from the pressure of being managed or corrected, responds to this inner permission by reorganizing itself according to its original design of harmony. This understanding removes urgency and struggle from the act of helping. There is no need to rush toward outcomes or to anxiously monitor progress. When consciousness is aligned with truth, results are not manufactured, they emerge. Healing becomes less about doing and more about being. It is a quiet inner consent to reality as it is beneath appearances, a refusal to argue with life through fear-based interpretation. As this consent deepens, the body ceases to be treated as a problem, and is instead experienced as a fluid expression of intelligence responding to the atmosphere of awareness in which it lives. When silence is spoken of as the medium of real change, it does not refer to the absence of sound or the practice of muting speech. It points to a deeper stillness where thought, intention, and personal effort come to rest. Most attempts at healing rely on activity of the mind, analysis, affirmation, visualization, or willpower. Even spiritual effort often becomes another form of mental motion. Yet motion, no matter how refined, belongs to the surface level of experience. Real change arises from a level beneath movement, where awareness is no longer trying to accomplish anything. Silence is powerful because it removes interference. The moment the mind stops reaching for solutions, naming problems, or projecting outcomes, it stops reinforcing the appearance of disorder. Thought, even well-intended thought, tends to operate from the assumption that something is wrong and must be fixed. Silence dissolves that assumption without arguing against it. In silence there is no problem to solve and no condition to improve. There is only presence. This presence is not passive. It is alert, receptive, and deeply intelligent, but it does not push or direct. In this inner stillness, something fundamental shifts. Awareness ceases to identify with appearances and rests in a deeper sense of being. From this standpoint, the mind is no longer the authority deciding what is real. Conditions lose their emotional charge because they are no longer being continually named, judged, or resisted. Silence acts like a clearing in which truth can assert itself without obstruction. It is not that silence causes healing, but that silence removes the noise that prevented harmony from being recognized and expressed. Words, techniques, and rituals belong to the realm of form, and form is always secondary. Silence is closer to the source from which form arises. When one abides in silence, there is a subtle surrender of personal control. The impulse to manage outcomes fades, and with it the sense of separation between observer and observed. In this state, awareness no longer stands apart from what is being perceived. The division between healer and healed dissolves, leaving only a unified field in which correction occurs naturally. This is why silence often feels uncomfortable at first. The mind is accustomed to activity and identity built on doing. When that activity stops, there is a temporary sense of groundlessness. Yet if one remains without rushing to fill the space, the silence reveals itself not as emptiness but as fullness. It is here that the deeper intelligence of life becomes evident, not as an idea but as an experience that requires no explanation, only availability. The statement that you cannot heal a person, only release truth, challenges the deeply rooted belief that healing is an action performed by one individual upon another. From the usual perspective, healing appears to be a transfer of energy, knowledge, or power from a healer to someone in need. This assumption subtly reinforces separation. One is whole, the other is broken. One gives, the other receives. Yet this framework belongs entirely to appearances and ignores the deeper nature of reality, where wholeness is not something that can be added or removed. Truth, in this sense, is not information or belief. It is the recognition of what already is beneath all interpretation. When truth is present in consciousness, it does not improve a person or repair them. It reveals that nothing essential has ever been damaged. Healing, then, is not an act of construction but of uncovering. It is the removal of false conclusions that obscured what was always intact. To release truth means to let go of the mental agreement with limitation, disease, or lack, rather than attempting to overcome them through effort. When one tries to heal another person, attention is usually fixed on a condition. Even compassion can unintentionally strengthen the sense that the condition is real and powerful. Concern focuses awareness on what is wrong, and awareness gives life to whatever it consistently entertains. Releasing truth shifts attention away from the condition entirely and toward the underlying reality that remains untouched by appearances. This does not require concentration or force. It requires a willingness to stop insisting that the visible picture tells the whole story. In this approach, there is no personal role of healer. The individual does not become an agent of change but a witness to what is eternally present. By resting in the awareness of wholeness, one stops contributing mental energy to the illusion of brokenness. This inner stance quietly dissolves the false premise that something needs to be fixed. As the premise collapses, the effects that depended on it lose their support. This process is impersonal. It does not depend on emotional closeness, permission, or even acknowledgement. Truth does not need cooperation from appearances to be effective. It operates by its own nature, like light revealing a room without negotiating with darkness. The moment truth is no longer opposed by belief in error, harmony asserts itself naturally, without drama or explanation. To say that non-interference is the highest form of love is to redefine what care and compassion truly mean. Most interference is born from fear, even when it appears as concern. We see someone struggling and immediately feel the impulse to step in, advise, correct, or attempt to change their condition. This impulse assumes that we know what should happen, how it should happen, and when. Beneath it lies the belief that life, left to itself, may fail. Non-interference is the quiet refusal to accept that belief. Non-interference does not mean indifference or emotional withdrawal. It is not the absence of love but the absence of control. It is the recognition that every individual is already within an intelligence far greater than personal thought. When we interfere, even mentally, we often insert our limited perspective into a process that does not require it. We project timelines, outcomes, and fears onto another's journey, subtly burdening them with our expectations. This mental pressure can be more invasive than physical action because it operates unseen, reinforcing the sense that something is wrong and must be corrected. The highest form of love trusts life. It allows space for unfoldment without trying to manage it. This trust does not come from optimism but from understanding. When one sees that harmony is the natural state beneath appearances, the urge to interfere loses its urgency. There is no need to rescue what is not truly in danger. By refraining from interference, we stop affirming the reality of disorder and stop assigning authority to appearances. Interference often strengthens the very condition it seeks to resolve. Constant attention, concern, and mental struggle keep the problem alive in consciousness. Non-interference withdraws that attention. It allows awareness to rest in a deeper recognition of wholeness, where the situation is no longer fed by fear-based focus. In this space, change can occur without resistance. Life is given room to correct itself, rather than being pushed in a direction dictated by personal will. Respect is a core element of this kind of love. Every individual is engaged in their own process of awakening, learning, and adjustment. To interfere is to assume superiority even subtly. To refrain is to honor their inherent completeness even when appearances suggest otherwise. This respect is not passive, it is active trust. It acknowledges that growth does not always follow the path the mind prefers, and that clarity often emerges from within, not from external pressure. When interference falls away, love becomes quiet, spacious, and unpossessive. It no longer needs to prove itself through action. It stands as a steady recognition of truth, allowing harmony to surface in its own time and way. Seeing wholeness dissolves the appearance of illness because perception itself participates in the reality it observes. What is consistently held in consciousness becomes the lens through which experience is interpreted and expressed. When awareness is trained to look for damage, imbalance, or deficiency, those qualities are reinforced as meaningful and real. Illness then appears not only as a physical condition but as an accepted conclusion about life. Seeing wholeness is not a denial of symptoms, it is a refusal to grant them ultimate authority. Illness gains much of its apparent power from being believed in as a defining truth. When someone is seen primarily through the lens of their condition, the condition becomes central to their identity. This focus subtly communicates limitation even without words. Consciousness, responding faithfully, continues to manifest experience in alignment with that perception. When wholeness is seen instead, identity shifts. The person is no longer defined by what appears to be wrong, but by the intact life expressing itself through them. Wholeness is not something imagined or created. It is recognized. Beneath every appearance lies a completeness that has never been interrupted. To see wholeness is to perceive from this deeper level rather than from surface evidence. This perception is quiet and assured, not emotionally charged. It does not argue with appearances or attempt to overpower them. It simply rests in the understanding that harmony is the underlying reality, while illness is a temporary and unsupported interpretation. As this way of seeing stabilizes, the mind stops sending conflicting signals of fear, urgency, and resistance to the body. The body, which responds continuously to mental atmosphere, begins to reorganize itself according to the sense of safety and coherence it receives. This is not a conscious instruction given to cells or systems, but a natural response to the absence of stress generated by belief in disorder. The body relaxes into its inherent intelligence when it is no longer being treated as a problem. Seeing wholeness also transforms the inner world of the one who perceives. There is less emotional reaction, less anxiety about outcomes, and less fixation on change. This inner calm is not detached but deeply present. It creates an environment in which healing is not pursued but allowed. When awareness no longer divides experience into healthy and unhealthy, successful and failing, it returns to unity. In unity, conflict dissolves, and with it the conditions that depended on conflict for their persistence. This way of seeing does not demand immediate results or visible proof. It operates beyond time, trusting that what is held in consciousness will appear in form when resistance has fallen away. The appearance of illness fades not through struggle, but through the steady recognition that it never possessed reality of its own. The idea that the healer must first disappear points to the deepest surrender required in true healing. As long as there is a sense of a personal doer, someone who intends, directs, or takes responsibility for outcomes, healing remains confined to the level of effort. The presence of an who heals automatically implies an other who needs healing, and this division sustains the very condition it hopes to resolve. Disappearance here does not mean physical absence or emotional withdrawal, but the fading of personal authorship. The personal self thrives on intention, achievement, and recognition. Even spiritual intentions can quietly reinforce ego when there is a desire to help, to fix, or to be effective. This desire, however compassionate it appears, is still rooted in the belief that harmony depends on personal action. When the healer disappears, this belief is relinquished. There is no longer someone trying to make something happen. Instead, awareness rests in a state of receptivity, allowing a greater intelligence to move without obstruction. This disappearance occurs when attention shifts away from self-reference. There is no monitoring of progress, no assessment of success or failure, no emotional investment in results. The mind becomes still not because it is forced to be still, but because it no longer has a role to play. In this stillness, the sense of separation softens. There is no longer a healer standing apart from a condition, there is simply awareness, open and undivided. When personal will steps aside, healing is no longer driven by desire or fear. Desire wants improvement, fear wants relief. Both are rooted in the assumption that something is wrong. The absence of the personal self removes that assumption. What remains is a quiet acknowledgement of reality beyond appearances. In this acknowledgement, harmony does not need to be produced, it asserts itself naturally, just as order emerges when interference ceases. This is why true healing often feels effortless and even anonymous. There is no dramatic moment, no sense of accomplishment. The one through whom healing occurs may feel as though nothing was done at all. This is not because healing failed, but because the personal self was not present to claim it. The absence of ego allows the movement of life to be unimpeded, functioning according to its own intelligence rather than human preference. The disappearance of the healer is an act of humility, but not of diminishment. Nothing is lost, something far greater is revealed. In relinquishing control, awareness aligns with the source of harmony itself. Healing then unfolds not as an event initiated by a person, but as a natural expression of life correcting itself when nothing stands in the way. At the heart of this entire message is a simple yet demanding truth: healing is not an action we perform, but a recognition we allow. When attention withdraws from appearances and rests in the deeper reality of wholeness, silence, and trust, the need to fix, correct, or interfere naturally falls away. Consciousness, no longer occupied with fear or effort, becomes a clear space through which harmony can reveal itself. In that space, love expresses itself without control, truth operates without argument, and healing unfolds without personal authorship. What remains is not a method, a role, or a technique, but a way of seeing that honors life as already complete, allowing restoration to occur quietly, gently, and in accordance with a wisdom far greater than individual intention.